Welcome, everyone. Today, we're jumping right into a really stunning scientific discovery. It's one that reveals this hidden universal pattern that connects the most diverse forms of life you can imagine. We're talking everything from bacteria to cancer cells, and it suggests there's a blueprint for life that might be written into the very fabric of reality itself.
Okay, so let's try to wrap our heads around this. If you were to look at a bacterium, a dog kidney cell, and a human cancer cell, you'd probably think they have absolutely nothing in common. I mean, they're wildly different sizes, they have completely separate genetic instruction manuals, and they even move around in their own unique ways.
But then, scientists did something pretty simple. They just zoomed out. And what they saw was, well, it was just mind-blowing. When you look at huge groups of these cells all moving together, the flowing, swirling patterns they create are, from a mathematical perspective, identical. So how on earth is that possible? How can such different ingredients end up following the exact same recipe?
To solve this mystery, researchers knew they had to look past what the patterns looked like to the naked eye. What they needed was to find the mathematical signature. You can think of it as a kind of universal fingerprint that's hidden in the geometry of all this beautiful chaos.
The key property they discovered is something called conformal invariance. The easiest way to think about it is like a fractal. No matter how much you zoom in or how much you zoom out on the pattern, the basic shapes and the angles, they all stay the same. It looks the same at every single scale, which is why you'll hear scientists call it scale-free.
So the first part of this universal fingerprint is a number known as the fractal dimension. It's basically just a way to measure how rough or, how wiggly the edge of the pattern is. And what's incredible is that for all these completely different cells, that number was always the same, right around 1.75.
The second part of the fingerprint is even more specific, and this is where it gets really cool. It's a magic number known as kappa, which describes the statistical properties of all these winding curves. And in every single biological system they looked at, kappa measured out to be almost exactly 6 every time.
This table really just lays it all out. You can see the measurements for bacteria, for kidney cells, for cancer cells, all lined up. That fractal dimension we just talked about, always right around 1.75. The winding angle and kappa are just more precise ways of describing the curves. But here's the really amazing part. All of these experimental numbers, from real living things, they perfectly match the theoretical numbers for a specific mathematical model called percolation, which, believe it or not, is the same pattern you see when water soaks through a paper towel. It's a perfect match.
Now, that just can't be a coincidence. I mean, think about it. There's nothing in the DNA of a bacterium or a cancer cell that says, hey, go form a pattern with a kappa of 6. No way. The explanation has to come from somewhere else, from a deeper, more fundamental principle that goes way beyond the biology that we know.
And this leads us to a fascinating and pretty radical new idea. Ryan Charmley's theory of infinity, or TOI for short. It's a framework that doesn't just try to explain this one pattern, but it actually proposes a whole new way of looking at the structure of reality itself.
The theory kicks off with infinity, but don't think of infinity like a number you count to. Instead, imagine it like a giant, infinite block of marble that contains every possible sculpture, every possible outcome, all at once. It's the raw material of reality, just full of chaos and complexity.
Okay, so you have the marble. Next up is symmetry. This is the fundamental tool, the universal sculptor, that carves structure out of that raw infinity. It acts like a filter, and it's always looking for patterns that are stable and unchanging, just like a sculptor works to reveal the statue that's hidden inside that block of marble.
Now, when that sculpture, symmetry, is finished with its work, what you're left with is what the theory calls a golden set. That's the finished statue. It's a stable, self-contained little piece of reality that has its own consistent rules, pulled out from all that infinite chaos.
The theory boils this all down to this one really elegant idea, which you can see represented right here. You start with infinity, your block of marble. You apply symmetry, the sculptor's tools. But how does the sculptor know what to carve? Well, they need a guide, a fixed point, and that's represented here by the 0. It's like a specific design or pattern they have to follow. And when symmetry acts on infinity through that fixed point, what emerges is a stable world, the golden set.
All right, I know. That's a very abstract idea. So let's connect this grand theory back to the concrete, real-world patterns that we're actually seeing in these living cells. This is where it all starts to click.
And this is the punchline. The theory's infinity, well, that's just the chaotic, unpredictable world happening inside the cells. The symmetry operator, that's the conformal invariance the scientists actually measured. The knot, or the fixed point,
That is the magic number they found, kappa equals 6, the signature of percolation. And the golden set, the final sculpture, that is the beautiful universal pattern we see in the cells themselves.
So this just forces us to completely flip our thinking. We usually assume that biology creates the pattern. But what if the pattern came first? This theory suggests that the pattern is a fundamental aspect of reality and that life is simply a system that evolved to become a vessel for it.
So what does all this really mean for how we understand life? The implications of this connection between a really deep metaphysical theory and hard scientific data are profound. It touches on the very nature of what it means to be alive.
This framework leaves us with 3 huge ideas to chew on. First, that life uses these universal mathematical principles to organize itself. Second, that being at a critical point, you can think of that as the perfect balance point between being too orderly and too chaotic, kind of like the moment water starts to boil. Well, that isn't some rare, finely tuned state. It might actually be the natural default state for complex systems like life. And third, this could be a clue to the biggest mystery of all, how life first popped up from non-living chemical chaos.
And there's one final, really beautiful layer to all this. The theory suggests that these stable golden sets are mathematically tied to the famous golden ratio. Now, the golden ratio is unique because it's the most irrational number, which, in mathematical terms, means it's the best at resisting disruptions. And that implies that the blueprint life is following isn't just universal, it's also designed to be as stable and as resilient as is mathematically possible.
And that leaves us with a final, really provocative thought to ponder. Maybe the universe doesn't just contain life by some random chance. Maybe it's fundamentally structured through these deep principles of symmetry and infinity to create the very kinds of complex, stable, and resilient patterns that we call life.